Hi everybody, Ricky here from Behind the Bars TV and welcome to my channel. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about life without parole. Now, life without parole, also known as a whole life tariff or a whole life sentence, was brought out in 1983 and it was kept for the most severe of crimes. People that had committed more than one murder, people that had committed murder, been to prison released, and went on to commit further murders, and people whose crimes were so heinous, the only sentence that could be passed was a whole life sentence. So since the introduction in 1983, there's been some 100 people given this sentence, and currently there's around about 70 still serving the sentence, and the remaining ones had either died or had their sentences reduced on appeal. But I will be getting through each and every case, 100 of them. But in this episode, I'm going to be talking about Victor Castigador. Now, just before I get into it, I would just like to say a massive thanks to my subscribers for your continuing support. But if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please go down, hit that subscribe button to help my channel grow. So, Victor Castigador was born in the Philippines in 1954. Now, just before I get into it, I would just like to say that anybody who's been to the high security prisons has heard about Victor Castigador. I done a podcast a couple of weeks back with Ginger J, who was in Long Lawton with Victor, and he will tell you himself on the podcast what it was like when he actually met and come face to face with Victor. He said his eyes were dark like shark eyes and he just looked like pure evil. But everyone had heard of Victor in the high security prisons because he was known and renowned for doing hits on people. And he had a fearsome reputation and everybody was scared and feared Victor because of his extreme violence and that he would take out hits on people without a second thought. Victor was born in 1954 in the Philippines and is a murderer who led an infamous grudge attack on an amusement arcade in London, which burned 2 security guards to death and badly injured 2 other people. Victor entered the UK illegally in 1985 and eventually got a job on an amusement arcade in Soho, London. Although he continued to work there, he and the arcade's proprietor developed a rift, and Victor, feeling a grudge, decided to concoct a plan to rob the arcade. With 4 young accomplices, Victor broke into the arcade in the late hours of August the 2nd, 1989. The arcade had just closed and the relief manager and cashier were going through the evening's takings when guns were pointed at their heads. The safe was duly emptied of cash. The cashier and manager, along with 2 security guards from Sri Lanka, were then forced at gunpoint into the inner cage of the arcade security vault. At this point, 3 of the robbers withdrew, but Victor and teenage accomplice Paul Clinton stayed behind. They tied the hostages up, poured white spirit over them, and tossed in lit matches before leaving, locking the door behind them. The 2 security guards died of burns and asphyxiation, but the manager and cashier were still alive and badly injured, with 90% burns when more staff arrived the next morning and raised the alarm. They identified Victor as the chief culprit and he was arrested along with Clinton and 3 others. Both men went on trial in February 1990 and were convicted of 2 murders, 2 attempted murders and 1 charge of robbery. Victor was given a minimum recommendation of 25 years by the judge. Victor was later issued with a whole life tariff from the Home Secretary. Clinton, whose young age was taken into account, was given a 20-year tariff. 3 other people were also jailed. Clinton appealed against the length of his tariff in 2003, but this was rejected, effectively condemning him to at least 6 more years in prison. Victor then went on a circuit around the high security prisons in England, and he was taking out hits on anyone that he thought necessary. On the 20th of June 2016, Victor battered another inmate to death with a rock that he got out of a fish tank on the wing. Victor used a stone wrapped in a pair of socks to rain what witnesses called full velocity blows down on the head and body of fellow inmate and convicted child killer Sidonio Texeira. Victor described to the police in detail how he had smashed his fellow prisoner's skull and claimed that as a former member of a Filipino death squad, he was only doing his job. He told detectives, "I'm wrong to kill somebody, but it's my job. When I was in my country, I was a member of a liquidation squad. Sometimes you have to punish evil." After the bloody attack in HMP Long Lartin in Worcestershire, Victor said 59-year-old Texeira was a horrible man and a bully, bluntly stating that if his victim had survived, he would have killed him again. His victim, who was himself serving life for murdering his 3-year-old daughter, was pronounced dead after suffering multiple severe head injuries. The court heard how Victor had taken a rock from the prison aquarium and made threats to do something bad to his victim in the days leading up to the assault. Opening the case for the Crown, Peter Greaves Smith said he told a prison officer he was increasingly frustrated by the victim's behaviour and said he treated all the prisoners with contempt and rubbed people up the wrong way. Threats culminated in the deadly premeditated attack launched at 9 a.m. on June the 20th in a holding area outside the prison workshop. A supervisor told how she suddenly heard thudding noises coming from the area. When a prison officer intervened, Victor immediately stopped the attack and sat quietly before he was taken off to segregation, as if the fury directed to Texeira had been turned off just like that, said Mr. Greaves Smith. The barrister said Victor had a history of violence against other prisoners, stabbing a fellow inmate in the eye with a makeshift weapon in 2006 and attacking another in 2011. Sentencing Mr. Justin Haddon Cave told Victor he had wrongly set himself up as something of an enforcer in jail and that it was a terrible, terrible thing to take another life. Returning Victor to prison, he said, "You sought to justify your actions by saying Mr. Texeira was serving a life sentence for murdering his child. It is not your job or your right to judge others or pass moral judgments on others, and it is not your job to punish evil." He added, "You should try and live out your remaining years in prison with some humanity and dignity." As he went down, Victor, balding and sporting a long ponytail, stood up and said, "What hope have I got? These people are pissing on me. He came to me, he's asking for that. I'm sorry, Your Honour, thank you very much." Victor was handed another whole life jail term. Just months after the killing, Victor died of a stroke on the 21st of March 2017. Victor was 62 years old at the time of his death. But hopefully you're enjoying the content, people. Remember, I'll be getting through each and every case, even the ones that have died in prison and the ones that had the sentences reduced on appeal. But if you are enjoying the content, people, remember to go and like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.